Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Celtic Way. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Tony Haggerty this morning. We're here to chat through all the various Celtic news and views and events and things upcoming. Tony, big trip this weekend, big trip to Pittodrie, tough match for Celtic. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it is a massive game in the context of the season already, isn't it, John? But yeah, look, I'm always confident if Celtic turn up, they're good enough to beat anybody. So, I'll, uh, last weekend's performance didn't enamour me greatly. So I'm just hoping that it's a slow burner and build up with Celtic, and they're going to get gradually better with each passing game. So, yeah, it's always a difficult trip to Pittodrie, but I'm quite confident Celtic can go there and get a result, John.
So, in terms of like the St Mirren performance, is there issues there for you that changes are needed to the team? Are we needing to bring in James Forrest, for example, as a starting right winger for this match? Or are you happy for Rodgers to persist with Yang? What are you thinking in terms of Adamida? The makeup of the attack is going to be crucial for this one, especially I think there's a lot of nervousness and worries around Celtic's attack at the moment, and I think a lot of people want to go for the optimal choice or maybe even different choices, considering what we saw against St Mirren.
John, I think nail on the head with James Forrest. He has to start for me on Sunday. He was very lively when he came on against St Mirren and helped Celtic get the win. So, yeah, he starts for me. We were wondering last week about Shin, weren't we? Yamada.
Mm.
And we said to ourselves in the group chat that nobody asked a question about Yamada. I'd be asking that question today because if Yamada's around, I'm thinking of starting him in place of Ida.
I mean, I get where you're coming from in that, and I think a lot of fans will agree with you. I'm just thinking of what we've seen from Brendan Rodgers in the past, and I personally can't see Brendan Rodgers throwing Shin Yamada into this game from the start as a starter because he's not played for Celtic. He didn't even feature last week. It would take a fair amount of turnaround with whatever he's seen in training or whatever he's seen from Shin Yamada to go from not featuring at all to have Johnny Kenny ahead of him to then suddenly starting an important game at Pittodrie. Now, we could be surprised, and I think I would be pleased with that surprise because it's something fresh, Tony, and it's something different, and that at least gives supporters hope than just seeing the same thing again and again.
I think you need to do something new, John. And I looked at Adamida last week, and my gripe with Adamida was the one he smashed off the post, John. Celtic badly needed a goal, and that's the way he takes it down is brilliant. But see that smashing it against the post, for me that was a certain goal. He should have just kept his cool and slotted it away. I don't know what he was trying to do, busting it or whatever, but I need a cool head in that situation, John, especially with the game on a knife edge like that. And you do two things here. You let Adam Eder play through it. You keep playing him till that goal comes and he gets his confidence back, or you just say, at the minute, it's not happening. There's a lot of angst and anger and fury towards Adam Eder at times, isn't there? Isn't there? And I don't want to see him become any kind of whipping boy, but that anxiety is transmitting to a player like Adam Eder from the crowd. So I just think Yamada would offer something new, give Aberdeen something to think about. Granted, I know where you're coming from as well with the managers thinking, but I would just like to see it's my personal preference, but probably Rodgers might not want, and I think it would be a lot of Celtic supporters' preference to see him start leading the line. But but James Forrest for me for definite, John. Yeah.
So Celtic last time at Pittodrie, and here's I'm throwing something at you here. Forrest started on the right and Yang started on the left, and they were both very good in the match. Is that a possibility with Maeda through the middle and taking Ida out the firing line? I'm not sure if Brendan Rodgers is going to do that. I think Yang needs to come out of that right wing area just from based on what we've seen against him. And I agree with you. It's time for James Forrest to come in from the start. Again, he was very impressive at Pittodrie last time he played there. He knows how to play against Aberdeen. He's had a lot of joy against Aberdeen over the years. And I just think the way that he added a spark into Celtic's performance. Now, I know St Mirren were a bit more tired in the game. It's not quite the same lay of the land for James Forrest coming into the match compared to Yang starting. And perhaps, it's just a consequence of the way Celtic are playing right now that the winger coming in off the bench is always going to look better and more involved than the winger starting, just based on the overall performance of the team. And I understand that. I would have James Forrest in from the start on Sunday. There's no doubt about that for me. Just I think he had as many touches as Yang in 30 minutes as Yang had in an hour.
Yeah,
You know, and
correct.
then like
And it was noticeable, wasn't it? So,
yeah,
and there is that option of Maida through the middle, isn't there?
yeah, yeah. There is.
And you know what? I don't think the Celtic supporters will be too perturbed by that either, because obviously Maida's proved it. Again, that would mean Yang starting. And Yang, for me, didn't do enough to start this game last week at all. So I would take him out the firing line as well. Listen, there is a real dilemma for Brendan Rodgers with the attack on Sunday, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Because despite the fact that Celtic hit the bar and they hit the post a few times last week, didn't create a lot of clear-cut chances, did they? That was my main issue and a big takeaway from that match. So I was a wee bit worried about that. And then people were saying that Adam Ida didn't get the service, but he get presented with one glaring opportunity and he missed it. You know, you just can't afford that in games like that. And obviously, Luke McCowan's come off the bench and he hit the deflected strike. So you know you're relying on the other guys, the impact guys, to come on and win that game for you, which thankfully Celtic did. So guys like Yang, for me, don't start on Sunday, John, I have to say. And it's up to the manager, whatever combination he thinks is going to be the biggest threat to Aberdeen.
I think he's going to persist with Ida. Like that's just my gut feeling. Despite that chance, now I've looked at that chance a few times, and in the moment, at the time, I was like, that's an outright sitter that he's got to bury that, etc., etc., etc. And I said the same on social media. I think I said it on a video as well. I've looked at it a few times. I think it's a little bit more of a difficult chance than you give it credit for at first look. Yes, it's probably the kind of chance that you want your starting Celtic striker to stick away, but just the way it fell to him and the angle he was at, I think he was. I actually think Ida in that moment was actually unlucky hitting the post in that scenario, and that's kind of my take on that. And I've said before, I don't think I've really got an issue with Ida's finishing. It's more his all-round game. And if Brendan Rodgers feels like that finishing is going to come in time, I think he's going to persist with him at least until the time that another striker comes in, if another striker comes in through the transfer window. That's just how I see Brendan Rodgers playing this situation, because we know he's a fan of Adam Ida, and we know that there's issues around Adam Ida. But I think my gut feeling is he's going to get another chance at Pittodrie. Whether people are happy with that or their hearts sink when they see the team sheet is another matter, and perhaps I might look for some freshness there as well. But that's just how I feel about it. I guess we might find a bit more from Rodgers at his press conference later when he faces the media.
Yeah, I mean he'll address certain issues today, won't he? Hopefully Shinya Mada being one of them as well, John. But yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, John, in the sense that I was a striker. That's a sitter. That's a sitter for me. If I missed that, I'd be torturing myself to the end of the game. But again, you've had a look at it many times, and you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. And the manager might well do the same and give them the benefit of the doubt and give them that nod for Sunday. And I say, these are the things that managers make the big calls, don't they? And these are things that you do with players. It's psychology of players at times, isn't it? This is a striker that badly needs a goal. Confidence levels, like buses, if he gets 1, 2 or 3 might follow, all that kind of thing. Or do you take them out of the team and just say, look, I can hear it from the crowd. It's not happening at this minute. You need to, work harder, as you say, in terms of his all-round game. So it's a big call. I don't necessarily disagree with you in the sense that I can see Brendan Rodgers, like what you said, playing him on Sunday because he's got a couple of options but not much else. But my preference would be to freshen that up and give Aberdeen something really new to think about, and that would be Shin. But that's just, I say, that's my only that's my preference.
Henrik McGlasson asking, how long would Jamesy last? It's a fair point. I think whatever the attack looks like on Sunday, we're going to see both James Forrest and Yang play in the match at some point. I think that's an almost guarantee, because, like Rodgers says, that's pure arithmetic. That's the options that Brendan Rodgers has available to him right now. And yes, it's difficult. We're in that situation. We've been complaining a lot about the lack of reinforcements in the transfer window, and it comes home to roost in moments like this when you're considering a difficult trip to Pittodrie. that you don't really have the options that you would like, either as a starter or coming off the bench. So I think whatever combination the manager goes with, we're going to see James Forrest probably play for an hour and Yang for half an hour, or Yang play for an hour and then James Forrest for half an hour. That's what Brendan Rodgers has at his disposal at the moment.
It seems to have become part of the norm, doesn't it now, John, with substitutes? 60-30 split, isn't it? To give you enough time to impact the game. And that's if you're coming on. Ange Postecoglou was very fond of that, wasn't he? That hour, switching on the hour mark. So yeah, it seems to have crept into the game, and that's what happened. But I'm a fan of that, John, because I think half an hour is enough time to make your presence felt and make that impact that you can in a football match. Luke McCowan did it last week. Tremendous cameo when he came on, and and wingers. I think that's enough time for wingers to make that impact too. You saw it with James Forrest. Celtic became more attack minded and were pushing forward at every opportunity. And James Forrest, you can either go for the hour or the half hour, but you know what you're getting with James Forrest. I think he's very creative and he's still got good legs on him. So yeah, I'm all favour with that, John. I quite like that setup.
Michelle asking, John, why is Nygren playing midfield when he's known as a winger? Why are we not using him when we are weak on the wings and when we have plenty of midfielders? I'm so confused. So, Nygren was deployed as a kind of right-sided midfielder for Nordsjælland in terms of position, but the people we spoke to before even seen Nygren in pre-season or even seen a lick of Nygren at all with the ball at his feet, the word was that even though he was put there in position nominally, I think that functionally he was very much a central influence for Nordsjælland as well. So I think that was the intention that he was signed for. I don't think he's been signed as a winger and then shoehorned into this role. He's been signed to perform a central creative role for Celtic as this connecting force between the midfield and the attack. So while you may see on some websites such as Transfer Market, etc., that he's played a lot of games as a right winger, he's not an out-and-out right winger in the sense that Celtic play their wingers. Celtic have busy wingers who try to arrive into the box from either side, try for cutbacks a lot of the time. Nygren's not that player, and from what I've seen of Nygren so far, it's fairly clear he's not that player. He doesn't have that explosive pace, for example, and he doesn't really have that massively direct dribbling ability. Now, does he have versatility there? Could he do a job there? I mean, I guess that's what we might find out, because I think you're right to an extent, is that we do have a lot of midfielders. We've got Engels, we've got Hatate, we've got Paulo Bernardo, Callum McGregor, and then we've got this dearth of kind of starting ability on that right flank. So maybe if we do put Nygren there, I don't think he would be an out-and-out winger, but maybe just for numbers' sakes and having the talent and attack there, Tony, it might be something that Rodgers considers at some point.
It might be a contingency plan, certainly for a game like Sunday, because he does have a plethora of midfielders, doesn't he? And I don't think that McCowan did himself any harm by coming on and scoring the winner on Sunday. So you've got him there as well. If you fancy it, and you could shunt Nygren out to the right wing, for that purpose, but then you would know exactly that was the manager's intention. I don't see him as a right winger moving forward. I see him more as that kind of central right position in the midfield. So, and as you say, that's what we were told. But yeah, I think again he has that option, and would Nygren fit there? There's only one way to find out. Play him there on Sunday if that's what you really feel you need, and we shall see what happens. But I just don't think Nygren will be shunted to the right wing. Again, that's just my opinion of what I think Rodgers would do with Nygren. But it's always an option, isn't it?
It is an option. Luke McCowan also in confidence and form at the moment after scoring his winner on Sunday. So I think that midfield is the one area of Celtic I'm not too concerned with. There might be slight worries when we're considering a European level and getting caught in those defensive transitions when we give away possession in opposition half. I think the midfield certainly has issues in that regard, but from a creative standpoint in the Scottish Premiership, from a just how the midfield functions in the Scottish Premiership, I don't have too much concerns about that area of the pitch at the moment, which is a good thing as well. Jemai Simpson-Pusey, Tony, could he get thrown in for a debut weekend? A bit early for him probably to make a debut. Now, I said yesterday on yesterday's show we're expecting to hear from Simpson Pusey yesterday. That was my error. So Celtic sent out a press call for a media event with a player with photography at Celtic Park after the media conference. I wrongly assumed that would be Simpson Pusey. That's my error. I might say, Tony, that most people would assume that, but it ended up being James Forrest, but I'll take that as my assumption and my wrong information. So I apologise for that on the show yesterday. We didn't hear from Simpson Pusey. But we might see Simpson Pusey sooner rather than later, just from the way that Rodgers has been talking about him, the way that he's kind of come to Celtic with the intent of getting first team football.
First and foremost, your defence. I don't think it was a massive jump to think Simpson Pusey was the man that was put up yesterday to speak to the media. So I'll defend you on that to the hilt. Yeah, I think my thoughts are that he'll go with Scales and Cameron Carter-Vickers only because Scales was arguably Celtic's best player last weekend, wasn't he? You know me, I'm the yellow jersey man, so Scales has it at this minute in time. But I think we'll see Simpson Pusey on Sunday because he ain't coming up here just to sit on the bench, John. And I think the manager will want to see him in action as quickly as possible. And I think he'll hope that Celtic are in a position where he can throw a guy like that on and give him maybe half an hour as well, just to see what he's like. And also, the player himself said he's the kind of cool, calm customer who likes to get the ball and play it through the lines, doesn't he? So I'd like to see that at some point on Sunday, if at all possible, and Celtic are in a winning position. But I think Scales and Cameron Carter-Vickers will be the two centre-backs that start on Sunday. I'm not necessarily saying they'll be the two that end.
Yeah, because there's, again, as we saw against St Mirren, Scales was kind of moved out to the left-hand side to replace Kieran Tierney, who had cramp. Brendan Rodgers saying after the match, still building Kieran Tierney's fitness. Something to watch, I think, as the weeks progress too, just in terms of depth there. I thought Scales had a good game against St Mirren, actually, and was very functional as a defender across that back line, and was pleased with his output. So I agree. I think he'll stick with Scales. I think he likes Scales when he's in form. And then I guess we see what happens if Scales needs to be moved out onto that left-hand side, what Brendan Rodgers goes with. But I agree. I think Simpson Pusey will at least make the trip as part of the match squad. And then perhaps we might see half an hour, 20 minutes of him, as you said there.
Yeah, I think most Celtic supporters would like that, wouldn't they? I think it's maybe just too risky for him to start in a game of that magnitude, because it's a difficult trip and you just don't want to throw him in and, perish the thought that he makes a mistake or something happens and, people he gets off on the wrong foot, and I don't think the manager would want that for the player. But I certainly don't think Man City are sending him up to sit on the bench, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of agreement that he plays a majority of matches. This one might have come too quick for him, but I'm sure we'll see him at some point on Sunday just to show what he can do and just to ease himself into it as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what else is going on around the club at the moment? Well, Celtic were hit with an SPFL charge yesterday, Tony, for the trophy day celebrations. There was a lot of pyrotechnics that day, so Celtic have been hit with a suspended charge. So effectively, 200 tickets will be reduced from that area of the stadium, it says in the statement, if there's a further pyrotechnic charge from Celtic in an SPFL match this season. So it's one of those kind of suspended punishments, Tony, but SPFL make it clear, and the Celtic weren't only club hit with a charge yesterday, making it clear they're kind of not standing for this anymore, and that they're going to be doing more of this kind of strict liability thing in terms of like reduced ticket allocations and things of that ilk. Very similar to kind of what UEFA do, albeit on a smaller scale. 200 tickets isn't a big deal for the wider Celtic support, but it's still tickets being taken away from fans. Yeah,
John, listen, how many times we know the rules regarding pyro now, and like as you say, that they're now targeting the offenders. So if it's 200 tickets restricted from a particular area in the stadium, fine. The next time you do it, it's going to go up and up and up, isn't it? They've racked up fines. They'll now be racking up bans. Certain supporters might not be able to see the football match. And all for what? We know the dangers of pyrotechnics. And I don't know how many warnings you can issue on this. again, I've always said that I can never tell Celtic supporters how to behave, but you know, this falls into the misbehaving category. So you have to say it's not as if it's the first time that Celtic on this issue in terms of pyrotechnics are repeat offenders. You just have to say to guys, come on, be smart, wisen up, listen to what you're being told, because at the end of the day, it's yourselves that will miss out moving forward.
Yeah, Pyro's a divisive issue. It obviously has a lot of critics for a fair amount of good reason in terms of safety and experience for others at the match. For some people, it really heightens the atmosphere and heightens the occasion, and you can understand that perspective to a point. Ultimately, and this is, not everyone will agree with this, but ultimately, it's the SPFL's ball. Do you know what I mean? And they can take the ball away from you. That's really how it works. And if they're actually starting to go into clamp down on this, then I guess it's up to individual fans to determine whether they continue with this kind of pyrotechnic display or they change it up. And I guess it puts the ball in their court. At least everyone knows where they stand, because no one's going to be shocked now if tickets are taken away because of the way the SPFL are doing it. And I mean, again, I don't think this is a really much of a wider issue for the wider support or even for Celtic as a club. I don't really get wound up by these minor fines and £10,000 here and there and that. It's first of all, it's not my money. If it was coming out of my bank account, maybe I'd have a different view. But like Celtic getting fined £10,000 here and there, I don't really get set my hair on fire with regard to it. I guess for the individual supporters though who could get tickets taken away from it, they know where they stand at this point. So if it continues, then they get the tickets taken away, and if they don't, then the SPFL are happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a kind of, it's now black and white, isn't it? If you do this, this is going to happen. But it's up to you. They now have the power to say we are going to ban fans from attending football matches if you continue to use the pyros. And again, as I say, I would never tell any Celtic supporter how to behave. If they think that that's part of the spectacle and they want to do that, then it's not for me to say.
And they may go, well, that doesn't matter. We'll take a game ban if we want to do it on this occasion. And again, I guess that's their choice as well. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Tony, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. And I've said before, we don't speak for the wider Celtic support. I speak for myself as a Celtic supporter, and that's just the way I feel about it. I just think there has to be some sense when you look at these issues now. I'm like you, I don't get too perturbed about it, because the individual can decide what they want to do inside a football ground, and I let them do that. I know how I would behave if it was me they were specifically targeting, and so that's just the way I would approach it.
So you don't have a cupboard full of fireworks behind you there, Tony?
Certainly not that I'm aware of.
What else in terms of news happening around Celtic? Not a lot, guys. Not a lot. We're waiting for Brendan Rodgers' press conference, of course, today. But in terms of transfer stuff, there's a real dearth of transfer links and information. There's a lot of rehashing of links that are maybe going by. We know that Celtic did make multiple bids for Jacob Graham at some point this summer, but that hasn't progressed to any sort of satisfactory conclusion. And we're waiting for Celtic to reinforce this attack. And we've complained about it a lot, Tony. It's getting to the point where we're talking about it so much that there's not really much else to say, unless Celtic actually deliver and end this stasis that we're in. We really are in a mode of stasis with regard to this attack. It's only Celtic that can end it. Until we hear word of that, then this feeds into what we're talking about with Yang and Ida, Tony. It's like the perception of Celtic's transfer is making it more difficult, and there's more scrutiny on them. They're in this whirlwind of noise and negativity because the club haven't strengthened Brendan Rodgers' squad to the strength it needs to be.
I think that's a valid point, John. That the inactivity, the transfer limbo, in terms of players coming in that Celtic seem to be in, it's manifesting itself in negativity towards certain footballers at the club. Adam Ida being one of them, and I've been a big fan of Adam Ida since he came in, big champion of him. And I'm not saying he won't score goals for Celtic, because he will, but there's, you're just looking at it's his all-round game for me that you touched upon earlier. But I think that's the manifestation of frustration on the Celtic supporters' part, and certain players are now being targeted. Yang's another one, isn't it? But again, this wouldn't happen if the club had brought in fresh wingers and a fresh attacker, and you were going into Aberdeen with more added reinforcements in that squad. You'd be going in with a spring in your step. You'd be buoyed by it all. But I think there's just a negative swirl around the club at the minute. You can't escape that. And Celtic have 6 days before the Champions League qualifiers deadline to address that issue and do something about it. But then does that smack of panic buying? And then again, will they end up paying a large proportion of money for someone who they might have got for cheaper had they been a bit more due diligence, or all those business practices that we've spoken about all the summer? And like you, I just think you can't get away from that negativity at the minute around the club. It's a byproduct of Celtic's inertia in the summer transfer market so far.
And what are you expecting from Rodgers later? And it's important to note that Tony's not at Brendan Rodgers' press conference later, so don't come at Tony if the questions later today aren't to the required standard. Don't come after Tony. Tony's not there later, but what are you expecting Rodgers to be like? My personal opinion, Tony, I think he's not going to talk a lot about these issues, because I think he's been very clear where he stands on his contract. He's been very clear where he stands on transfers. I could see him saying, I'm not really talking about that today because we know where we stand. There's nothing really new to say.
He's a master manipulator, John. I think he'll get it back onto the football. I think he'll want to talk football issues and contract and players. I think he'll neatly swerve, or he'll say the likes of my thoughts I've given them for the past while. I think you'll want to talk about Aberdeen. You'll maybe want to talk about the Champions League games coming up, and that's hurtling headlong towards us. Friday night football next weekend against Falkirk. That might come up as well. But I think he'll skillfully manoeuvre it round to talking about the football, because I think, like you, he's possibly fed up talking about all the other issues and nothing continuing to happen. And until there's something concrete to say, then I think he'll just not so much stonewall it, because he's very kind with his time and he'll answer every question. But I think he might play the diplomatic card today and try and steer it as much as he can towards Sunday and events after Sunday, footballing events after Sunday.
Yeah, and maybe the Shinya Yamada will be a talking point. Maybe Inamura will be a talking point. I think that's perhaps stuff that Rodgers might get into today, but we'll see. Tony, thanks for joining us today. Just a note, you're heading up to Pittodrie on Sunday to take in the match. It's your first away trip of the season, I think, isn't it? Apart from Cork City. You're looking forward to that?
Oh, I can't wait, John. Can't wait for that. I'm going about 6:30, 7 in the morning and leaving to shoot up. But no, listen, it's I love it. It's the cracking part of the mode of employment that we do, to actually go and watch football matches in the flesh. It never loses its appeal. Even going to Aberdeen, it's a place I've always loved going to. But yeah, when you're covering the team that you support as well, there's always that added edge to it. But yeah, I can't wait for that, John. And I'm just intrigued by all the subplots that are happening at Celtic at the minute, even the negativity as well. I want to see how that manifests itself on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely subplots from a Celtic perspective. Subplots from an Aberdeen perspective too. We're not going to talk about that at the moment. We've got a video coming later today with Ali Begg from the ABTV Aberdeen YouTube channel. He gives us the perspective on where Aberdeen sit this summer. They're wanting strengthened in the transfer market too. Their fans are wanting more and more as well. So that's an interesting subplot for them. They've also postponed their third league fixture per the SPFL rules. So this is their last chance to pick up points for a while in the Scottish Premiership. Obviously beaten by Hearts on Monday. It's important to note that it's a really big match for Aberdeen as well, Tony, and we'll find out more about that later. It's there's always two. We always talk about Celtic. We're always focused on Celtic, but there's always two teams that play, and they've all got their own motivations and ambitions.
Yeah, and Ali Begg's a cracking guy, former Celtic TV presenter as well, so he knows a lot about both clubs, doesn't he? So yeah, listen, there's always something at stake for any club playing against Celtic, And I think they were buoyed by the Scottish Cup win, because I think all the noise going into the Scottish Cup final was about Celtic and the treble. So they'll be looking to, to do a number on you again, John. And yeah, as you've just mentioned there, they've they've taken the option to postpone a fixture. So they'll
Yeah.
need points on the board. They won't want to go into that kind of recess having no points on the board. So it's just important to them as it is Celtic on Sunday. But always our focus is on Celtic, isn't it? So that's
Yeah.
where you're coming
Of
from.
course it is. Of course it is. So listen, if you want some Aberdeen chat, more Aberdeen chat later today, that video is going out at 5 o'clock this evening. We've got full coverage of Brendan Rodgers' press conferences across the website. We've got lots coming up this weekend as well ahead of the Aberdeen game. And as I say, full coverage on the channel. It'll be myself and Tony covering the live game. Tony will be from Pittodrie. I'll be hosting. We'll be chatting before and after the match in Aberdeen, regardless of what happens. And hopefully it's a good result. And hopefully Tony's smiling from the press box at Pittodrie.
I'd like to think that would be a certainty, John, but hey, there's no certainty.
Listen, thanks everyone for joining us live. Thanks for joining us in the comments. Leave us your view. How do you see the Aberdeen game going this weekend? Leave us your thoughts in the comments below. As I say, lots coming up on the website and the channel in future. But until next time, we'll see you again on the Celtic Way.